I just got really emotional because I recognize that when we just say yes, when we just say yes, when we're asked to do something that is difficult, or that music teachers are online talking about the fact that it's impossible and difficult, and in that energy of, yeah, I can do this, I'll take it on, brilliance comes out of it. And I just thank you for being an inspiration to me to be willing to say yes to those opportunities that show up that are so challenging. So bravo, thank you. And now I got to get together so I can give a talk. So, a few weeks ago, Brad Kiefer and Dr. James were up on the stage, and they were talking about adventure. And Brad and Karen are some of the most adventurous people on the planet. They just returned from Zion, right? And the pictures were just breathtaking of them climbing and being unstoppable and living in life's adventure. And Brad talked about that they've actually found a gene, an adventure gene in people, and that people who have a proclivity for climbing mountains and jumping out of planes and things like that actually have a gene for that. And then James asked, who has that gene? And I was like, I do not have that gene. That is not something in this DNA. I've never been somebody who considers myself adventurous. I mean, we've established a few months ago, I won't even swim with fish, right? Like, I'm not adventurous. But what was really interesting is I did not raise my hand, and I was not considering myself to be adventurous. And I had several people in my life, including Dr. James, talk to me afterwards about the fact that they were surprised that I didn't see myself as adventurous, because that wasn't something that others saw. That other people, when they looked at me, didn't see the fear or the pressure or the grip. And so really all that meant is that I hide it really well, right? It didn't mean that it didn't exist, but it was interesting because what I saw, what I always do when a conundrum presents itself, or what I'm presenting on the outside doesn't mirror what's going on the inside, is I shine a big old flashlight on it. I'm like, oh, there's a dark place in there, let's take a look. And that's what people see when they see somebody adventurous. I really understood that what James was talking about was this willingness to just dive in, this willingness to say, this is hard, let's figure it out. And it's sometimes messy, and it's not always graceful. And so to me, that pressure is like, oh, well, that's an internal process, right? I really had to look at, for anybody that knows me, I'm a minister. I was teaching classes. I was handling the social media. I have 2 children. I have a husband. I was running a company that I had built by hand. And I was in the process of switching to another company and feeling the weight of the pressure of all of the employees that I had left behind that I care very much about. And I was entering into Adventure Month, feeling anything but adventurous. And there were people saying, but you just had the ability to take on a new job and to just say yes to that. And I was like, but I don't think you understand what it feels like to feel like I'm in a pressure cooker all day, every day with it. And there was this watch as she buckles and bends but never breaks. No mistakes, just pressure. And I was walking around so tight-fisted that there was no room for adventure. I wasn't climbing any mountains. I certainly wasn't swimming with fish, and I wasn't jumping out of planes. And I wasn't even really living. I was just going through the motions. But on the surface, I got it all together. I'm the strong one. I moved churches, right? I love that one. I was like, oh, that's got to go. So, but I dig, and I pick, and I dig, and I recognize that I was so tightly wound. And it wasn't until adventure came my way that I realized that I was living the opposite of adventure. I was not on this ride in any sort of free and open flowing way. And I got to thinking about what caused that. Where does that come from, right? Because I get my headlamp on and I'm like, let's go in, let's figure this out. And what came to me, this may surprise you, but I have been told that I am exceptional my entire life. That's where you go, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, she's exceptional, right? I was exceptionally verbose and precocious and smart, and I seemed to have an aptitude for everything that I touched pretty easily. Things came easily to me. And this may sound like I'm bragging about being exceptional, but I promise I have a point other than to just, give you the laundry list of things I'm great at. There's a real hazard to feeling the pressure of being exceptional. And the hazard is that you start to believe that all of your worth and all of your value comes from your output. If you are a 4-year-old savant that can play music beautifully and has an ear for the piano and just sits down and plays, there is an incredible amount of expectation put on you that you will create great symphonies and that every symphony will be better than the last one and that you continue to produce and produce and produce. Well, the hazard of that is that you stop, for me, identifying myself as being miraculous and sacred and something worthy of love unless I am being exceptional, unless I am producing something great, unless I am moving mountains. And that pressure, tip, 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 till you just go pop. The title of my talk today, with an amazing graphic by Lori Savage. We've got even a video. Is After the Pop. So I was keeping it all together, right? And I was doing all of these things, and I was switching jobs, and I was being Mom of the Year, and I was doing all of these things that I thought that I should be, and the pressure was coming in, it was coming, and I couldn't breathe, and this song was everything to me. And then I popped. I epically popped like a petulant teenager. Now, I don't recommend the way that I chose to go about this. I think there are probably easier ways, but maybe it is. I blew off class. I went to a Laker game with my son. I called in sick for work. I let go of relationships in an instant that felt hurtful and toxic. I just popped. I let it blow. And all of that pressure was just, we talk about treatment being a movement of energy and that it happens in an instant, that it's not something in the future that will happen. And we spend a lot of time debating. I've heard a lot of debate. Is it a process? Is there a process to transformation? Or does it happen in that instant when we treat? And I will tell you, for me, there was no process. I was in a pressure cooker one day, and I was screw it the next. And again, not graceful. But what happened for me is I started to recognize that there was sacredness in each moment. I started to slow down. I changed everything radically in that instant because I started to understand that on the other side of the pressure was joy and relaxation. I was at the beach last week, and it was very windy, and there were birds flying, and they had found that sweet spot. of the wind where they didn't have to flap their wings at all. They were just coasting and gliding. And it was one of the most magnificent things that I had ever seen. And it felt like such a metaphor for life, to be able to coast in the wind rather than struggling. And then just below it, a couple feet down, there was another bird that was clearly trying to fly with them and keep up with them. But he was flapping his wings. He had not found that current. And that bird was like working his tail feathers off, trying to keep up with these birds just under. And I thought, gosh, if only he knew that if he flew just a little bit higher, that there was this peace and ease waiting for him. And I thought, isn't that like our consciousness? We spend all this time fighting our experience, being sad, being in conflict. And if we just knew that if we could just elevate our consciousness just a little bit, that amazing things would be in store for us and that we wouldn't have to struggle and fight. And so, this week, my heart has been a little heavy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world, and Ukraine has definitely been weighing on me. And one of the things that it brought up for me, and in the conversations that I've been having, is this idea of privilege. How is it that I get to live here and be in sacred communion with all of you today when there is all of that going on? Karen Wright and Eric and Marilyn and Scott are leaving on Tuesday to go to Uganda. Oh, and Peggy are going to Uganda to go be of service and to give back to this community that, for all intents and purposes, is not as privileged as we are, right? And the thing is I get asked a lot, like, why, right? Why do we get to be here while there's people suffering elsewhere? And if any minister is really honest, we have a lot of things that speculation, right? Some people believe that we signed some sort of an agreement. I don't remember signing any sort of agreement about what this life experience was going to be. Some people believe that we've had an experience before that we're bringing into this experience in this life. I don't remember any experience before. So if I'm really, really honest, the answer is that I don't know. I don't know why I was born here and live an affluent, beautiful life. But what I do know is that if that is my experience and that's what I was given, then I have an obligation to live it, to stand in the gratitude of it, to live each moment like it's sacred, to fly like the birds that don't need to flap their wings. That is how we honor this experience. And yes, we donate our time and our talents and our treasure, and we hold Ukraine and Uganda and all of the pain and suffering in this life in the highest consciousness and do what we can. And then we live like each day is sacred. Each moment is sacred right here, right now. Each of you are miraculous. Do you know how many twists and turns fate and life had to take for you to be you and to be born in this time, in this moment, in this congregation, sitting here together in sacred community? You are miraculous. And it's time that we start living like we are miraculous. And after the pop, it's possible. Once we stop holding on to everything that we think we need to keep together, we are free to live like we are sacred. I can tell you, I stopped setting my alarm for 5 a.m. and sleeping through my snooze, and then getting up feeling bad about myself as I rushed straight into my email and started my day. I start my day in sacred communion every day today, and I block off 2 hours in the morning for me. I'll work later if I have to, but 8 to 10 a.m., that's mine. It's mine because I am sacred and I am worthy and I am worth it. Sasha Sagan, do you have the slides, Thor? Sasha Sagan, she's the daughter of the amazing Carl Sagan, wrote a book called Small Creatures Such as We that has changed my life. And she says, no matter what the universe has in store, it cannot take away from the fact that you were born. You'll have some joy and some pain and all the other experiences that make up what it's like to be a tiny part of a grand cosmos. No matter what happens next, you were here. And even when any record of our individual lives is lost to the ages, that won't detract from the fact that we were. We lived. We were part of the enormity, all the great and terrible parts of being alive, the shocking, sublime beauty and heartbreak, the monotony, the interior thoughts, the shared pain and pleasure. It really happened, all of it, on this little world that orbits a yellow star out in the great vastness, and that alone is cause for celebration. Everything in life is sacred. You know, when the world gets a little bit crazy and I start to feel that pressure, I've been going on these nature walks. I will literally just stop and go outside and walk. And it's really hard to feel anything other than sacred and miraculous when the birds are chirping and the sun is shining and you realize that the sun always rises and always sets every single day. And the stars come out and they're there, whether they're clouded by clouds or whether we can actually see them, they are there. And when I think about the order, there is harmony. And in that place, in that communion of my soul, anything is possible. And from that place, you are living the adventure of a lifetime. Namaste.